Welcome to Behind the Books, the podcast that takes you into the minds of our Master of Liberal Arts faculty. I'm your host, Tristan Cabello, Associate Director of the MLA program, and in each episode, we'll explore the multifaceted world of the liberal arts through the eyes of our professors. Join us as we uncover the ideas, the inspirations, and the intellectual pursuits that drive their teaching and research. Whether you're a student, a scholar, or simply a lifelong learner, tune in and gain a deeper understanding of the liberal arts from those who live and teach them every day. Hi, Shan. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, Tristan. It's good to join you. I'm Sean Connolly, and I'm a new lecturer in the Master of Liberal Arts program at Johns Hopkins.
Yeah, welcome to the program. So this podcast is really to introduce our lecturers to students and to prospective students to talk about their research interest, what they teach, and how they feel about the current states of the liberal arts. And so I'd like to dive right in with a question. Can you introduce yourself to the students? Can you talk a little bit more about your academic background, your professional journey before you joined the program?
Absolutely. So, I guess I have a fairly long academic journey, actually.
Uh-huh.
Before I was here at Johns Hopkins, I was at a small, historically Black college in West Virginia called Bluefield State University. There, I was
Mhm.
a department chair of humanities. I also was the director of the Honors College program. I was a professor of humanities there. I did teach interdisciplinary courses in philosophy and literature and writing. Prior to that, I was a postdoctoral fellow at Tulane University down in New Orleans, in which I conducted research and I also taught in the freshman writing program. And before then, I did most of my graduate work at Cornell University in New York in the discipline of comparative literature. Spent some time in Europe doing research over there, and I also did a degree at the University of Paris 8 in philosophy.
Oh,
My
wonderful.
interests, my interests more broadly, I'd say, I guess that's the biography, but I guess my interests more broadly are the intersection of political theory, history, and culture. So, for example, one of my recent articles not too long ago concerns the visual culture of fascism in Vichy France.
Mhm.
And I was interested very much in literature of the time in the interwar period that was fascist in nature, and also other writers that tried to resist fascism through their own writing, culture, and art and performance. So that's
Oh, wonderful.
basically, I would say,
So,
yeah, that's kind of my background and my professional interest
yeah,
in the
so
liberal
very
arts.
interdisciplinary, as many of our students are in the MLA program. And how would you describe, Sean, your teaching philosophy? We always ask as teacher, what do we bring to the classroom? What is it that you bring to the virtual classroom?
I firmly believe that teaching, whether it be in the classroom or online, has to be student centered. And what I mean by that is,
Uh-huh.
I don't lecture, I don't try to give a lot of lessons where I talk a lot. Instead,
Yeah.
what I try to do is give students things to read, things to watch, things to do, especially. And then after they do watch or read those things, come to the class, come to me, come to the discussion boards online with questions, questions for discussion, questions for clarification. I really do believe that learning takes place through doing, and
Yeah.
through thinking and through asking questions, does not really take place through listening to someone who already knows things talk.
Of
Of
course.
course, we
Yeah.
have. Of
Yeah.
course,
Yeah.
we of course we do learn from other people who know a great deal about subjects, and we
Yeah.
always should be listening. But on the whole, I teach mostly through. I organize. I try to create an environment, structure an environment in which I ask certain questions that can be answered through the things we're learning about, and I let the students ask the questions that they'd like to have answered about those materials, and also
Yeah.
maybe debate or present things from a new perspective using the materials that we provide in class to read, to watch, or to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So very
Yeah,
interactive again,
yeah,
as we do in the MLA program. And also, I mean, what you mentioned is so important. I mean, I always tell my students that I'm actually learning a lot from them too, right? And
yes, of
we're
course,
learning a lot from each other. And I'm not
absolutely.
here to deliver, knowledge or expertise or opinions that they have to to learn. I mean, I'm here to make sure that they forge their own opinions, right? Um, and what kind of advice would you have for a student who's starting the MLA program? I mean, we have students who, of course, are entering this program at Hopkins that's very rigorous, very intellectually challenging, and sometimes are stressed out about the requirements and the demands of such
Mhm.
program. What kind of advice would you give a student?
I think, as someone who's gone through his own share of stress in graduate
Mhm.
school,
Mhm.
I can very much relate to those issues. I think what is key is to know that the faculty, first of all, the faculty were once in your position, and
Absolutely.
they're more than willing to listen to any concerns or questions or challenges you're facing, either with the material or with graduate school life generally, right? I
Mm.
mean, it's important to simply reach out to your professors and tell them, I'm having some difficulty this week with this, or I need some more help with that, or I'm going through a particular issue right now that I need some time with. And we're here to listen. We are here to listen and to facilitate their learning. I mean, that's why we're here. And I, for one, have had personal issues in my own life or personal frustrations, with my education, that I needed the help of professors and also counselors and things to help to listen and to help me get through and improve, and also encourage me to do better. One of the best pieces of advice uh, is to know that your faculty. I was very much intimidated in my first year as a graduate student by my professors, and I was also intimidated by the amount of work. I think a lot. If you go to your professors and you say, um, there's a lot of work here. Maybe you can give me some advice on what things to focus on or to navigate, or maybe you can tell me, how to balance my
Yeah.
work schedule a bit. We'll probably give you some good advice. I mean, I've
Absolutely.
actually, in my previous academic career, I actually was also a student advisor, and I had to have a lot of these discussions with students
Yeah.
that weren't necessarily just about course content. It had a lot to do with simply managing the workload and trying to be a successful student generally, in addition to mastering whatever it is they learn in class. So I would advise students: don't be intimidated by your professors. Feel free to just communicate with them, to interact with them, and ask for help and strategies when you need them.
Yeah, and that's very good advice. I mean, often students do not know that whatever problem they have, uh, we went through that too, right?
That's right.
And we can of course give advice because this is something that we probably also felt, when we were starting grad school.
Yes.
So, as you know, one of the questions that most of our students may hear in their family or with their friends is when they enter the MLA program, the question along the lines of, but what are you going to do with that? How will those skills translate to the real world, to your profession?
Mhm.
Do you have examples that you can give? Like, how do you see the skills and knowledge from a liberal arts degree
Mhm.
being applied to the real world or to the professional world?
A lot of people make this distinction between liberal and vocational education. I think, to be honest with you, the margins between those two things are have
Of
always been a
course, yeah.
little blurred, but I think they're increasingly blurred more now than ever before, because so much of the technical expertise that we have requires liberal arts skills that
Yeah.
have been taught since ever the liberal arts began, arguably in classical antiquity up to the Renaissance, and on to today. I think, the things that we ask students to look to know, and the ways of which they teach themselves, requires us to look at things from different perspectives, have very advanced linguistic abilities, problem solving abilities, analytical abilities. Importantly, when it comes to solving problems in any profession, you're asked to look at things through different perspectives and always kind of look at those things through the lens of new information. You're constantly being bombarded in the modern world with new information, whether you be on the job or off the job. And that new information is going to cause you to look at things through a different perspective. That's really what the liberal arts have always been about, right? I mean, the liberal arts has always been about, an encyclopedic form of knowledge, or an encyclopedic form of education, a well-rounded form of education that allows you to appreciate and discuss things from multiple perspectives, that really any professional position will
Yeah.
require you to have at a certain level.
Yeah.
I work currently now as a government auditor,
Yeah.
and we're constantly having to produce research for Congress that requires us to look at issues, very complicated issues, very technical issues, from different perspectives and integrate new information and interpret things from different lenses. That's what the humanities and that's what the liberal arts have always been about. And I think that those skills serve them well
Yeah.
in
I,
any
I,
profession that they go into.
yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, the skills that you learn with a liberal arts degree can be applied really virtually to any profession. You are going to need critical thinking skills,
I would
writing
also add,
skills, communicative skills, and all of that.
absolutely. I would also add that in the particular class I'll be teaching in the spring in digital
Yeah.
humanities teaches students a lot of software skills and computer skills, technical skills,
Yeah.
in interpreting data and things like that, that would well serve them in any professional field nowadays as well.
Yeah.
So, I have no doubt that the program, if not specifically the things that we'll be learning in my class, will be very useful to them in their
Mhm.
professional career hereafter.
Of course. I'd like to talk a little bit about your own personal inspirations. Who are some of your academic, some of your intellectual inspirations, and why?
Wow, I never really thought of that. Who are some of my inspirations, academic inspirations? Um, I suppose, it's hard for me to pinpoint a couple and say
Yeah,
these are
yeah,
people that were very inspiring to me. It's more about experiences, I would say, maybe experiences or things I've read that inspire me to, even personal experiences, that have inspired me to look more keenly into things. I mean, I remember maybe one formative example, just briefly. Um, I remember, there was a lot of discussion about, when I first started teaching about digital rights.
uh-huh,
About rights to teaching and rights. Who owns my lectures, and I put them online, and there's a lot of controversy about that. But if you ask the average person what a right is, it's kind
uh-huh.
of hard to it's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
hard to come up with an answer. They know they have them, and they know they're defensible by law, and they know they're even necessarily moral categories, but to like really define what it is and nail down what it is, it's quite difficult. And so those kinds of experiences always animated my intellectual curiosity to look into the history of things, or where they
Mhm,
come from, what they mean, and what are some of the controversies or conceptual difficulties surrounding them. Those
mhm,
kinds of experiences where we encounter something we hear every day or experience every day, but come to think about it, we don't fully understand. Those are the moments, I think, that ever since I started an academic career, but continue in my academic career to motivate me. So those are the things that I would say are my intellectual inspirations that keep me working, keep me asking questions, and keep me researching to this day.
mhm. And is there a book or an article or a piece of literature that has significantly influenced your academic journey?
I would say one of the books that was, the most impactful for me, a couple of books, I guess, if it were to list my favorite five books, I
Uh-huh.
guess one of them was definitely Fyodor Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov,
Yeah, yeah.
which is not really a controversial pick, I I
Mhm, mhm.
suppose. Um, I really loved Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra. That was another one of my favorites. Um, Another one of my favorites was Andre Gide, The Immoralist.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Another great favorite of mine, I would say, uh, oh gosh, there's so many to list, to name.
Yeah.
I loved, the Genealogy of Morals, also by Nietzsche, had a
Uh-huh.
very significant influence on me. And I don't know if I could talk about any of these books if you'd like me to, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
just those are some things that inspired me. And also, believe it or not, I have a lot of musical influences that inspired me as well.
Uh-huh, such
Those are
as?
all things. Those are all. So I love the punk movement in the
Uh-huh, uh-huh,
1970s,
uh-huh. Very interesting.
especially anarcho punk movement, was very inspiring to me. There's actually a new book that came out of Duke University Press not too
Yeah,
long ago about
yeah, yeah,
punk rock during the Reagan era, which was actually a really fascinating book.
yeah,
Um, uh, I guess there's also, I can name social movements, social social leader, the political leaders, and that have also inspired me. Noam Chomsky is one of them.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
Um, just Angela Davis is another one. So
Yeah.
I could go. There's all kinds of influences from all
Yeah,
kinds of
yeah.
sources that continue to motivate
And
me.
so for our listeners here, I have to
Right.
remind everybody that even though we are predominantly a online program,
Sure.
our headquarters are in DC, and many people don't know that DC had a very strong punk movement in the 80s, right?
Absolutely.
That Georgetown was actually a punk scene. I mean, back in the days. And
Absolutely.
so a lot of
Yes.
people don't know that, and then when they discover this about DC, they're often surprised. But there was really the punk movement was very much alive in the 80s in Washington D.C.
Absolutely. I mean
Um,
that history is waiting to be written, I think.
yeah, totally, totally. Um, so there's no question that the liberal arts are under attack, you know, in universities and by many political movements.
Yes.
What is your vision for the future of the liberal arts education? What do you think needs to be done?
Mhm. I think it's under attack, right, for two reasons. First of all, I think it's necessary to understand, insofar as it is being attacked, what are the primary reasons why it's under attack. I think the primary one, you've already kind of hinted at it in one of your questions, is the economic utility of
Hmm.
studying it, especially when university education has become so expensive and now far exceeds,
Yeah,
the rate of inflation to go to attend university. Um, so that's one. I think that's one source of attack. I think the other source of attack primarily is coming. And it's not unrelated to the first, but the second primary one is an ideological battle, a culture wars battle that we see replicating itself across arguably the entirety of Europe, and North America and South America.
yeah,
But the culture wars issue that maps onto the current political conflicts that are going on throughout the world right now concerning different kind of reactionary and progressive
of course.
forces that are battling out kind of an ideological battleground about cultural values and national values and things like that. In terms of forging ahead, how do we save liberal arts? I think um, I don't. I think what's interesting about the liberal arts, I think, in that space is that traditionally liberal arts is understood to be a very traditional and conservative educational value system. On the
Mhm.
one hand, I mean, it's at least as old as classical antiquity. It's been a perennial feature of American higher education ever since its inception. So on the one hand, it has this cultural history that is, has been inflected through kind of very conservative trends and national trends,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it also has embedded within it a self, the self critical, the critical perspective that is necessary to always look at
yeah,
things in a
sure.
new way, right? And so there's a kind of a dialogue within the liberal arts always between what is familiar to us and what we know and what values we're supposed to have or should have, and how we examine those critically. I would say that the liberal arts has always been a conversation. It's not a set of doctrines, it's not a set of values.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a conversation about those doctrines and those values that should be inclusive of all perspectives. And I think for the liberal arts to move forward on ideological grounds, we need to continually frame it as a conversation, not as a set
absolutely.
of doctrines or dogmas or values or an ideological program, but rather as a discussion among many ideological programs. That's the way to forge ahead, I think, on the ideological grounds. In terms of the economic grounds, its utility, I think we need to advance and advocate for how the liberal arts manifests itself in everyday practical vocational ways. Well, remember that Steve Jobs, during one of his addresses, one of his annual addresses that he gave, I think it was at WWDC, he said that Apple was at the intersection of technology and the liberal arts. That's what he said, because he thought that the human being and the human experience should be at the forefront of technological design, not the other way around, right? And so that includes aesthetics, that includes ease of use, it includes appeal, it includes looking at familiar things and wanting to learn new things, and letting the human interface drive the way in which we construct a world using our technology. Um, Also, just in terms of our everyday practical, vocational lives, what things do we do day to day in our jobs that require us to use our liberal arts skills, our reading, our writing, our analysis, our thinking, our reframing of problems, um, always look and also examining what it is we do with them in ever larger context, whether it be in through history or culture or politics, and bringing those things to the fore to change maybe some of the workplace environments we have. There's a lot of workplace activism now to change the nature of the workplace, to make it more inclusive,
Absolutely.
to make it more friendly to our everyday lives, to make it more a part of an organic whole, of a greater part of our lives as an organic whole, rather than a separate cutoff dimension of economic productivity that is somehow separated from the rest of our lives. I think
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
all of those things are things that require liberal arts skills and knowledge to
yeah,
address, and
yeah,
that they are in fact addressing in changing the workplace,
yeah,
and also are part of the workplace um, that we encounter every day. So
yeah.
that's kind of a long-winded answer, but it was a big question. So I
No, no, no.
hope
That's a very interesting thing, and really, you mentioned all the things that we think about all the time, really,
yes,
and if, of
yeah,
course, the importance of the liberal arts in the workplace
right.
uh, is very much present. Not always recognized, but I mean, it's very much there. And I'd like to end this podcast with a more personal question about your hobbies and your interest outside of academia, and how do those personal interests impact also your professional life?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, so I have a lot of interests outside of my
Uh-huh,
academic
uh-huh.
work. As I mentioned before, I do love music and I do play guitar, and I have something of a minor obsession with guitar pedals, to
Hmm,
to
hmm.
constantly give new sounds to my music. I was heavily influenced very much by rock music in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I would say loud guitar music is a general it's a general descriptor for the
Yeah, yeah,
genres I
yeah.
listen to, but all the genres in there are very informative to I think in a way, all of those genres of rock were for their time always trying to question the boundaries of what music could be.
Of course. Yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that questioning of boundaries of what music is or ought to be or should be is very much analogous to liberal arts questioning what we have in order to arrive at something slightly new, but
Yeah,
not completely divorced from what came before. I would say that that's what some of the music I listen to does, and also parallels what I do in my academic life. I also try to these days, now that I'm getting older, I'm trying to stay fit and healthy.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
That's inspired me to learn a great deal more about my health and try to figure out ways to which my daily health decisions are more a part of my organic life as a whole during the day.
Hmm.
So I've had to think creatively about how to eat more in a more healthy fashion, how to integrate exercise in a healthy
Yeah,
fashion, to do it in ways that are, that complement the other things I want to get done with my life. So I've had to
yeah,
think a little bit out of the box to do those things.
yeah.
I think that what else do I enjoy doing? I very much enjoy cooking.
Hmm.
One of the things I love about cooking, and I love cooking things from around the world. I'm constantly learning about different parts of the world through the spices they grow, through how they integrate those spices, and learning about the history of food culture is something that
Hmm.
really opens up a new vista about understanding culture generally. It's
Yeah,
amazing how
yeah,
much you
yeah,
can learn about a culture and a people simply through the food that they have, that they cook, but
yeah, yeah,
also
yeah.
the things they use to cook with, and also the methods they cook with. It teaches you a great deal about a culture and their day to day, any given people and how they live day to day. So all of those are things I enjoy outside of my academic life, outside the liberal arts, that I nonetheless think are very much part of my a life of the liberal arts.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
I always
Yeah,
think that cooking should be a liberal art because it is
of
an art
course.
and a science. It
and
really
and
is.
it's and it's so interesting that you mentioned all of that, because I teach the capstone project in the liberal arts, in the master of liberal arts, and I always ask students to do a capstone project about what they like, what they're truly passionate about. And
Right.
so we have a lot of musicians. We have a lot of students who are into fitness. And so just this past year, I've had a student who's also a musician, wrote an opera,
Wow.
and enrolled students in the program to actually sing in the opera. And
That's
I've had, for
incredible.
example, another student who wrote a history of fitness in America. And so, yeah, all those things are important, and also are always, of course, encourage my students to research a topic that they're truly passionate about, a hobby that they have, and to make that their personal capstone project at the end of the MLA, which often really generates fascinating research and fascinating projects. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think this is very important also to connect really uh, the liberal arts to the hobbies that we have in our personal lives, and just make sure that the two inform each other, right? So thank you so much for sharing that, Sean. um, and that concludes our podcast. So Sean, thank you so much for joining us today.
I thank you so much, also, Tristan, and the Liberal Arts Program for hosting me today.
Thank you. And stay tuned for a next episode to our listeners. There's going to be one episode released every 2 weeks. And so there will be a new episode released in 2 weeks from now. Thank you for listening.